Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. You have arrived at your destination. Your route guidance is now finished.
Good evening, everyone. This is John Tapp. We are International 9900i driver with the Detroit Series 60 engine, which is 500 horsepower, and the Eaton Ultrashift. We're going to start with Casper, Wyoming. Some of these are full, so there is one left. There was one left. So
Time to hit the road.
anyway, so let's get that trailer and get going.
Okay, here we go. finding a new route. Let's do this.
Sorry about that, guys. I got the wrong trailer, so I had to get it back. So I will have a first destination in just a moment. So let's try again, everyone.
Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. This is where it ends. Drive safe. Turn left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left.
That asks big questions about the entertainment we love or hate. And this week, hate. We're going to go deep on a topic that I am obsessed with. Movie flops. Bad films. Films that underperform. Films that are such disappointments that they become part of movie history for all the wrong reasons. We're going to look back on the biggest movie disasters of the last decade. And to do this, I'm joined by Lizzie Bassett and Chris Winterbauer. They're the hosts of the movie podcast, What Went Wrong? Let's get into it. So we're going to run through, hopefully, 4 of the biggest flops of the last decade or so. And I believe it's only fitting that we start this conversation about the biggest flops of the last decade by beginning with the flop that might never die, 2019's movie adaptation of the Broadway musical Cats.
Tonight is a magical night
Caution, please
where
mind
I
speed.
choose the cat that deserves a new life.
Going to the ball could get dangerous.
I get excited just saying that.
Keep right.
This is such a
And then
flop,
turn
but such a cultural icon.
The expectations were so
right.
lofty. That's what differentiates it from any other film that we're going to talk about today. Not just commercially, but as Lizzie mentions, there were Oscar aspirations here.
Yeah.
I blacked that out. Who was going to get an
Yes.
Oscar for Cats?
Well, they thought everyone. they thought everyone.
And let's list to everyone. The everyone cast included James Corden, Dame Judi Dench, Jason Derulo, Idris Elba, Jennifer Hudson, Ian McKellen, and then cherry on top of the cake, Taylor Swift. She was a cat up in there too.
I blacked out that Idris Elba was in that
I think he
movie.
did too. I think he did too.
Yeah. There were Oscar goals for this. That was actually one of the reasons why, and, obviously with this movie, the VFX was much maligned as, something that looked ridiculous. However, I would argue that is not the problem with this movie at all, even though it looks insane. They have human hands. So they rushed the whole VFX process because they were trying to hit an Oscars deadline.
Yeah.
Girl, stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
All these people were like, yeah, maybe we just might.
100%, 100%. Tom Hooper was like, this is my next Oscar-winning picture. Ian McKellen, go lap that milk out of that bowl. And
So this film they rushed it so much and rushed the visual effects so much. As you mentioned, when the movie hits theaters and people see Judi Dench's human hand appear on the cat, Universal Pictures has to update the film's special effects while it's still in theaters.
yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah, that's like unheard
Insanity.
of. They sent a new cut out. Also, I think at the premiere, Tom Hooper was like, we were working on it until 48 hours ago. And it's like, it looks like it, buddy.
The hallucinogenic sequence of the cockroaches dancing is
delicious.
remains. If you watch that on any substance, you may never come back from your trip. Like it won't happen.
So let's just, for folks who have lived under a rock for the last 50 years and don't know what we're talking about, Cats was the film adaptation, animated / live action, of the legendary musical all about the story of a tribe of cats called the Jellicles. In this movie, right there, you're just like, this is absurd. Anywho, they decide, the Jellicles do, which cat will ascend to the Heaviside layer and then come back to a new life. That's what the film was all about. Like, cat reincarnation. Yeah. Based on the 80s musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber. It was weird on stage. Got even weirder in movie theaters. But this movie, and correct me on this if I'm wrong on the figures, y'all, the budget that they told us was $95 million, and the box office worldwide was about $75 million. So mega flop.
Big time flopper.
Definitely be a flop. And you'd have to imagine the budget was probably higher if they are rushing out VFX after the release of the film. So I would guess that it maybe even broke 100 million, for all we know. As Lizzie said, big time Oscar push, big time. I believe they had a for-your consideration page for Cats in the fall as it was heading into theaters.
By the way, they removed about 6 days after the movie came out, which is so sad. It's so sad. They really thought they were going to do it.
Flashback to that, opening weekend when Cats hits theaters. I remember being like, oh, this looks so bad. I'm going to take a few substances and go see this film. But what was that moment like? Y'all cover film, think about film. What was the cultural impact of Cats' first weekend? Or at least reaction?
This was our first episode that we ever did, and I think it kind of seeing this movie sort of spurred us to think of how did this happen? Because it is such an unmitigated disaster, and it's fun. I enjoyed rewatching it, but just trying to break down the story of how did so many people say yes to this thing?
Why did they?
Well, I think it's the theme of today is that this was existing IP. You said this was a massively successful West End originally and then Broadway musical. I think the thing, and you touched on this when you tried to explain the plot of Cats, is that there is no plot.
Because it's like a series of stories. Who wrote the stories that it's based on? Was it T.S. Eliot?
T.S. Eliot, and their poems. That's the whole thing. And also, nobody thought that Cats the musical was going to work. I want to just briefly read this quote, if I can.
Yeah.
Which is that Hal Prince, famed Broadway producer and director, Andrew Lloyd Webber was trying to explain Cats to him before it had come out. And he was playing him some of the music. And Hal goes, "Andrew, I don't understand. Is this about English politics? Are those cats Queen Victoria, Gladstone, and Disraeli?" And Andrew Lloyd Webber looked at him like he'd lost his mind and said, "Hal, this is just about cats." And that's it. That's the problem with Cats. That's both the success of it on stage, I think, and the problem with the movie.
Well, then you have an Oscar-winning director.
And an Oscar-winning actress at this point, because Jennifer Hudson's in there.
Yes.
And Hooper had done Les Miserables. He'd done a musical,
which got an Oscar for Anne Hathaway.
Yes.
And made almost $500 million against a $60 million budget. It was wildly successful.
It was.
And I feel like you look at all these ingredients on paper and you say, who knows? I wouldn't have greenlit the Broadway show, but that did really well. Why wouldn't I greenlight this? Everybody involved seems to know what they're doing.
I'll give you a lot of reasons.
Right. Well, but my point is when all of the ingredients start to line up and you say, everybody involved in this, has a lot of clout and there's a lot of commercial success behind it. And then, of course, it was the harbinger of doom. The COVID-19 pandemic, tracked the opening of that movie.
Wait, and did they coincide?
Yeah, because I believe the first signs of COVID were in December, right when it was released, and then it coming into 2019. This was one of the last movies released in theaters before everything shut down. I believe, Lizzie, it was one of the last movies we saw in theaters before everything.
What a way to walk into a global pandemic.
It really, really was.
Did Cats give us COVID?
I believe it gave us toxoplasmosis, and then we got COVID from that.
Yeah. So then it just doesn't work. It is maligned and ridiculed for months. What is the lesson here? What is the lesson for Hollywood or for viewers or for you even of the flop that was Cats?
I think success in another format does not equate success on film. Especially if you don't have a smart way to make this make sense on film, don't do it. Part of the reason why it succeeded on stage was that there is no story, and tourists who didn't speak English could show up in New York and enjoy Cats because you don't need to. You don't need to know what they're saying. They're not saying anything. That, and don't abuse your poor VFX team.
Pay your VFX people right. And this is a common through line right now. For years, Marvel wasn't doing right by their VFX people, and it showed. This is pay your VFX people. Give them time to make the work. Yeah.
I also think, hubris can be the death of a film before it's even released. And I think that this movie had a target on its back coming into the release, partly because of how bullish everybody was around it. And that's something we've discussed on our podcast. And especially with the hyper online world that we live in today, I think a little humility can go a long way, because there's this common adage, the only person who can make a hit is an audience. Nobody else knows what's going to work at any point in time. And so I think there was... it was an easy movie to take down because there were videos circulating of how seriously people were taking this on set. And again, kudos to them. There's really some fantastic craftsmanship in this movie. I think the VFX artist did yeoman's work with something very difficult. And then, again, we're crapped on by Mr. Corden, for example, in that awards show. Yeah, at the Oscars.
What did he do?
He and Rebel Wilson got up at the Oscars and presented, they may have actually been presenting a VFX award, I'm not sure, but I can't remember. But they, made some jokes at the expense of the Cats VFX team. And I just remember everybody laughing. Yeah, and I was just like, that's not it. That's
not why this movie didn't work at all.
In fact, I liked the human hands. Why not? I liked that Jennifer Hudson's robe disappears into her digital fur when she lays on the ground,
Cats, a flop I'm still kind of obsessed with. Listeners, viewers, I recommend you watch this film. not sober. All right, with that, time for a break. When we come back, more of our favorite Hollywood flops with my guests Lizzie Bassett and Chris Winterbauer. They're the hosts of the movie podcast, What Went Wrong. All right, stay tuned.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
Hi, I'm Ken Burns, and I'm thrilled to invite you to a special evening with Houston Public Media. On June 5th, join me at the Hobby Center as we preview our latest series set to release this November.
More information at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
Support comes from DePelchin Children's Center. May is National Foster Care Awareness Month, and DePelchin is celebrating the foster parents who ensure that Houston area children are part of safe and loving families. Learn more at DePelchin.org.
On our next Call to Mind special, we know we should try to diagnose a mental or behavioral health problem as early as possible. But how early?
He would cry and sit in the car and just not want to go in.
I'm Kimberly Adams. Join me for a look at how critical early intervention can be for a child's mental health. Listen for Treating the Young Mind from 8 p.m.
Sunday night at 10 p.m. on News 88.7.
Hey, y'all, it's the Sam Sanders Show. Every week on this show, we ask the big questions and give the hottest takes on the pop culture we're obsessed with. Let's get back to my chat with Lizzie Bassett and Chris Winterbauer. They're the hosts of the very fun movie podcast, What Went Wrong. This week, I'm with them to break down some of Hollywood's biggest flops. The films that, despite the obvious, probably shouldn't have been greenlit. Maybe you've seen them. Maybe you hated them. Either way, let's keep talking about them. All right, next flop, not about cats, but about clowns. Help me say this, because French is not my any language. Joker, Folie à deux.
Yeah, Folie à deux.
Folie à deux. Okay.
Yeah, Insanity of Two. It's like a communal hallucination.
That's what that movie was, it sounds like.
I think you're right. An Insanity of Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix.
And Lady Gaga's sitting there like, can I sing?
Well,
Are you going to let me sing?
Will you let me sing? I can sing well.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do that
The beauty of Lady Gaga is that every film she's done, save for A Star is Born, she's performing one movie and the rest of the cast is doing another one. And I like that.
House of Gucci, which I loved. It's a mess.
Father, son, House of Gucci.
House of Gucci. Delightful.
Yes, yes. So, all right, let's get into this movie. Such a big flop. Joker, Folie à deux. Closer, I don't know. Directed by Todd Phillips. Written by Scott Silver and Todd Phillips. The sequel to the very, very, very successful Joaquin Phoenix Joker. Can we call it an origin film?
Well,
Sure.
can you? Because Todd Phillips has thoughts and feelings on that as well, which I learned when I was looking into this a little bit. Yeah, I think he's trying to kind of shrug off some of the hate that Folie à deux got by saying that, no, you guys, you're dumb. It's not the Joker, you'll notice. It's just Joker, Sam. So his argument is this could just be an origin story of a guy named Arthur, who maybe isn't the Joker. Maybe he's the inspiration for... I can't even try to explain
Joker
this
is an
more.
idea.
Thank you. That's
We are
it.
all Spartacus. We are all Joker.
That's right.
Yeah.
Soylent Green is Joker. Yes.
We're all jokes here.
Yeah.
This, to me, this is the classic example of a movie that was never intended to exist, and you can feel it in every frame. And to be fair, this is the only movie on this list that I really don't like. I like cats. I admire cats. I will get to the other ones. I didn't like the first Joker, and I really don't like this Joker.
So, yeah, my relationship with Joker As soon as the trailer came out for that first Joaquin Phoenix Joker, I was like, this will probably get him an Oscar. It ain't for me.
No.
It felt very dark.
It felt like an SNL parody.
Yes, but it was big, and I remember him being all goofy, running down the stairs, being weird, and it worked.
Yes.
But then I remember the movie itself, with its long tail, becoming a conversation about the internet and alt-right and like incels, because the manosphere glommed onto the first Joker. So then I was like, I'm definitely not going to see that.
Which I think is interesting, and you go ahead and cancel me now. I kind of enjoyed the first Joker. I know Chris is gonna. Yep, I'm on r/red pill every day, but I will stand by the first one. I think that it is a good movie. I don't disagree with the commentary that came about because of it in terms of sort of what it may be condoning, although I don't think it does. But
and by the way, I didn't dislike it because I thought it was
Chris just hates it as a movie.
I just didn't enjoy watching it. Like I have no principles. I just didn't enjoy the movie very much. And I will say, fantastic craftsmanship. The cinematography, the makeup, the acting is very good, obviously. The costume design. I think the movie looks amazing. So no disrespect to anybody.
You just said great gowns, beautiful gowns. That's always a diss. It looks amazing.
Was that Aretha?
Yeah,
great
talking
gowns,
about cat star Taylor Swift.
Yes. You mentioned that sequence where he's, dancing down the stairs to Gary Glitter, which is a whole different issue. Noted sex offender who's in prison for a long time because of that. Which they knew. Anyway, whatever. There are problems with the first Joker, but like that sequence is what everybody remembers from that movie, and it's essentially a musical number. So you would think it's right there, right? Like, this was fun. Joaquin Phoenix turned in this very over-the-top, like, energetic performance. And let me ask you, was that in Folie à Deux?
Yeah, the second movie's not energetic.
Okay. So y'all got to tell me what the second movie exactly is, because I refuse to watch it.
That's fair.
From what I can tell, it is a dark musical drama in which Joaquin Phoenix returns to play Arthur Fleck, a.k.a. the Joker. But in this one, Folie à Deux, he is incarcerated in a mental institution where he meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga. And she sings too?
Does she?
Kind of.
Does she, Sam? Because this is the biggest problem with this whole movie, is that they hired Joaquin Phoenix, who, of course, nominated for an Oscar for Walk the Line, and Lady Gaga. Now, those are two people who I think we all can agree can sing. That's right. They don't.
Honestly, now I'm imagining A Star Is Born with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga.
Would have been fun.
Might have enjoyed it better. Lizzie's like, I don't know.
I'm going to cancel myself. I'm a Bradley Cooper defender.
Well, and what's interesting, a lot of people think one of the reasons this movie spiraled out, Bradley Cooper had dissolved his producing partnership with Todd Phillips.
Oh, Bradley Cooper could have saved Joker Folie à Deux.
I honestly think maybe he could have, but they don't let them sing. This is one of the biggest problems in this whole movie.
Wait, they don't sing in this movie, but it's got songs.
They do, but they sing bad. Oh. He's whisper singing, he's scream singing.
He's like singing in character, right? As opposed
to... bad.
Is Gaga at least good at the singing?
She is,
no,
but
they won't let her.
She's trying to get closer to his level.
He literally said in interviews, I told her not to sing well. And it's like, because it's a character
Let me tell
thing.
you one thing you don't do.
Yeah.
Tell Lady Gaga to not sing well.
That's right.
She's got a gift, and it must be shared.
But she's also whisper singing. It's so strange. They hire these two people who could have pulled off a musical, and then the whole movie, they are pushing back on it being a musical, and it doesn't make any sense.
Even the first number kicks in, you're kind of like, oh, this is a nice jolt, because the movie's so dour.
Right.
It's so bleak, and it's very slow, and then all of a sudden, the music kicks in, and it's, oh, this could be fun. It's, Incel Shawshank Redemption musical time, and he starts singing.
Wait, Incel Shawshank Redemption movie time. That's the episode description for this podcast episode.
But then the music never, it's like they don't let it loose. They don't let the imagination run wild, and everything feels a little hamstrung as a result, and you're not looking forward to the next song because, you know, the songs are kind of going to be a little quiet and not that upbeat.
So this movie goes on to get nominations for Razzies, including Worst Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel, and Worst Screen Combo for Phoenix and Lady Gaga. The budget was about $200 million, or at least they told us that, and it made about $207 million worldwide. It still made $207 million?
The first one made $1 billion.
Oh.
$1 billion.
So even if you just think of, you know, the people who are going to show up the first weekend, and the movie had a precipitous drop-off, right, from the first to the second weekend because word of mouth was terrible. And the reason the first one was, I mean, the first film was one of the most successful movies of all time. It was the most successful rated R movie ever made until Deadpool and Wolverine. And it, I think nobody expected it. I don't think Warner Brothers expected it.
They didn't, because they actually, so they split a lot of the production cost with 2 other production companies for the first one, and then I think they were mad about that when it made $1 billion. Right. So for this one, they didn't do that.
And
so they absorbed the whole loss.
You know, Todd Phillips was paid, I believe, $20 million. Joaquin Phoenix was paid $20 million. Lady Gaga was paid $12 million.
Wait, they paid Lady Gaga less than Joaquin Phoenix?
Have you seen?
They cursed themselves.
That checks out, though.
Okay.
To be completely fair, I feel like he carried the first film. Lizzie, well, now I'm canceled. But, you know, your above-the-line costs alone are higher, more or less, on this film than the entire budget of the first film, almost.
Yeah. So, what is the lesson of Joker Foley Adokes? I'm going to say, I think the lesson is never give a director final cut. You have to have studio notes. Had some executive at whatever studio just seen it and been like, you gotta change some stuff. Could have been avoided. I'm guessing whatever deal he had to make this movie, he was like, here's the movie and you gotta take it.
He did. I think he did not even have to test screen it.
Are you serious?
I believe so. And I believe
they made me pilot test this show.
Yeah.
Did you make $1 billion, Sam?
And more.
Remains to be seen.
I believe he'd made $1 billion on the Hangover trilogy before that.
That
was him too.
That's Todd Phillips. He's an extremely successful director for Warner Brothers.
So I remember enjoying Cats because I was on a substance or two. I live in California. It's allowed. Would I even enjoy Joker? Okay. Okay, I'm not going to try it.
I think the lesson here is don't greenlight a movie based on Joaquin Phoenix's dream, which is where the idea for this one came from. Apparently, it came to him in a dream. Just say, no, thank you, Joaquin. You're a great actor.
Yeah. And I would say, like, you can't choose your audience, for better or worse.
There you go.
You can't choose your fans.
I'm talking now with Chris Winterbauer and Lizzie Bassett. They're the hosts of the movie podcast, What Went Wrong. This episode, we are breaking down some of the biggest Hollywood flops of the past few years and asking what happened.
And then turn right.
Number 3, I'll just be honest, I also saw this movie in theaters opening weekend, and I had a hell of a time. It was enjoyable in its badness. It's a little movie called Madam Web.
I've seen that man before. So who is he? Ezekiel Sims. He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
I'm already smiling. I love this bad movie. Tell folks what this movie continues to be.
I also love this movie. It is just an unmitigated disaster, and I think we'll get into some of the reasons maybe why. It has some of the funniest lines I've ever heard, delivered with such just delicious deadpan from Dakota Johnson.
You can feel the hatred from Dakota Johnson while she's acting in the movie in which she hates.
I love. It's so good. My favorite line very early in the movie is, "I hope the spiders were worth it, Mom." And it just, that really sums it up.
What was the other one? Where she's like, Mom was in Costa Rica doing research or something?
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Honestly, it's great. Got all the information I needed in one line.
Yes.
This movie is destined to be a camp classic. It is.
Oh, it is. It is. In my house.
It's totally fun.
As the kids say, this album is platinum in my house.
It moves.
Love it.
I love all the actors in it. Give me Adam Scott, Uncle Ben. Give me Church Mouse Sydney Sweeney. Give me Isabella Merced. It's I love the woman who plays her mom. Excuse me, I'm blanking on her name. She's a fantastic actress. She was from *Halt and Catch Fire*. Carrie Bichet is fantastic. It feels like the little brother running after all the big Marvel movies, tripping, landing on his face, falling down 100 stairs. But I really do. It's still fun, and I like how fun it is in its absurdity.
And can I just wax poetic a bit on the genius of Dakota Johnson?
Mm-hmm.
She makes it fun. Yes. She is such an interesting actress to me and cultural figure. She's a Nepo baby, but you don't care.
Yep.
That's right.
She's often a bad actress, but you don't care.
Yep.
And there's something about her where you're like, I want it.
Yeah.
I want it. And maybe it all goes back to her being the one to finally start the cancellation of Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
That's not true, Ellen.
Well, I didn't even know you liked me.
Of course I like you. You knew I liked you. You've been on the show many times, and don't I show like?
Yeah, but I did invite you and you didn't come.
I love her. It's honestly the energy of Dakota Johnson on Ellen's show is also the energy of Dakota Johnson in Madam Web.
Well, so interestingly, I guess you asked what is this movie. Technically, this is an origin story for the character of Madam Web, who does exist in the same universe as Spider-Man, I believe, in the comics. However, it does not in these films because does-ish. For rights issues, Spider-Man cannot appear in these. That's
why he is inside Emma Roberts' belly as we are making.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, she's in this one too.
She's in this one too. Everyone's in this. Everyone's in this. Also, you didn't mention Tahar Rahim, poor Tahar Rahim, who plays the villain in this, who is a great actor. Who, if you've seen The Looming Tower, he's excellent in that. Sam, I don't know if you remember this, but so many of his lines in this movie are ADR'd to the point where...
What does that mean?
It's
automated dialogue replacement. It's when you go into a recording booth after production and you re-perform your lines because you either need to change something for story purposes or you need to correct a technical error in the recording.
I think it's story purposes.
It's all story purposes in this movie.
Yes, because half the time his mouth isn't even moving or it's saying something else. And the line he has is and I feel so bad for him.
Poor baby.
I mean, it's funny. But you mentioned Dakota Johnson's sort of detest for this. She did say in the press tour that the script that she signed on for was substantially different from what they started shooting. So I think this thing just went through, and if you look at the number of writers on it too, I think this went through a ton of changes even before they started and then continued through post-production is my guess, is that they were still trying to fix this thing.
It's 100%. And I would just want to call out this director, S.J. Clarkson, who I think is a fantastically talented television director. She's directed a lot of great TV. I have so much empathy for this person. She comes in, this is going to be her debut feature film, and the irony is she is trapped in the web of legal issues around all of these characters and Sony's attempt to build this weird cousin universe to Marvel at the same time that Marvel's going. And as a result, the script has to change in order to facilitate whatever tie-in they're trying to do.
Into the world they're making.
Yeah, the rumor is that the movie was initially supposed to tie into Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, but then they had to change it to move it into the early 2000s to tie it into Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but they couldn't show Tom Holland in the movie, and it was a period piece, but you couldn't tell what period it was.
Why do they keep doing this? I've had this conversation before in this podcast feed because we talked Marvel a few weeks ago when Thunderbolts came out.
Get ready.
There's still this dogged commitment to honoring multiple storylines and worlds.
Yeah.
But does anyone care anymore if it connects?
No.
Well, we'll get to this in the next movie, but the multiverses have collapsed upon themselves like a dying
Also, once
star.
you do multiverse, you can just do whatever, so just do whatever.
Well, that's the thing. They eliminate consequences as quickly as they can offer fan service, and I think that's the really challenging thing with the multiverse. And you have a movie like this where it becomes a reminder that you're actually watching an inferior character who is, and I don't mean that in the pejorative sense, I mean that in the fact that she's just not, Cassandra Webb is not popular in the way Spider-Man is, and you're just Easter eggs just remind you I could be watching a Spider-Man movie right now.
Yeah, well, and what I think is accepted by viewing audiences
Get ready to turn
is
right.
ignoring some of the rules if it just keeps the thing fun. I'll never forget one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. They just switched it up when they wanted to.
Yep.
The little baby Nicky shows up. He's an infant in one season, then he comes back next season and he's 5 years old. Or Aunt Viv, at the start of the show, she's a dark-skinned black woman, then all of a sudden she's a light-skinned black woman.
Yep.
Don't love Fresh Prince of Bel-Air any less. Like, once you connect me on a thing and I like the people and the stuff, you can ignore some of the rules and just make it a good show. But something about this superhero comic book IP, they're afraid to do that or they do it badly.
Well, and yes, and they're also trying to, with this, I think, sort of reverse engineer a franchise for the Spider Women, played by, I think, is it Celeste O'Connor, Isabella Merced, and Sydney Sweeney.
The Spider Gals.
Yes, the Spider Gals.
Okay.
So, like, that's the whole thing, is this was like a launch pad for them, I believe, more than it was for Madam Web, which is a weird move to begin with. And then also, my understanding is that Madam Web is an old blind lady.
She is.
But they were like, no one wants to see that. She needs to be young and hot.
All I want to see now is Dakota Johnson playing a blind Spider-Woman.
Yes.
That's 100%. All I want to see.
Do you remember the end shot of this movie? It's her in like wraparound sunglasses and her fancy wheelchair spinning around at the Crow window, and I was like, yes, give me this.
You try surviving an explosion at a fireworks factory. It's not easy.
So this movie, I remember two things about it. Horrible reviews.
Yes.
Dakota Johnson was sassy the whole press tour.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, I love her. So during the press tour for this film, or actually afterwards, she told Bustle, quote, "It's not nice to be a part of something that's ripped to shreds, but I can't say that I don't understand." So she was like, "I get it, y'all. I get it."
She literally was like, "This is bad."
Yeah. Rolling Stone called Madam Web, quote, "the Cats the movie of superhero movies."
Yeah, I think it's more fun than Cats in some ways.
Bars on the floor for that one, though. Yeah. It got, in terms of Razzies, it got Worst Picture, Worst Actress, Dakota Johnson, and Worst Screenplay. Yeah.
Screenplay is pretty not good, but again, that's almost never the fault of the actual writers. I feel like this one is an awful lot of studio meddling.
I agree. I think this became such a pretzel in attempting to make it work that I don't blame anybody involved in the production at all.
They're going to work.
I just think there was no way you were going to land this plane.
Also, if you think about this had to be like pretty laborious to shoot too, because of all of the time jumps. They're going back and they're redoing the same sequences over and over again with tiny details changing. That's a nightmare to have to keep track of and to have to reshoot a scene, 3 times to have all of her little Madam Web moments where she's jumping back and forth. Like, this was not an easy thing to make.
This movie, its budget was reported to be between $80 and $100 million. Its box office take was around $100 million worldwide, so definitely a flop. But dare I say, of the 4 films we've picked this episode, the most likely to be an enduring camp classic.
I hope so.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think it hurt the reputations of the cast, which is
maybe love Dakota even more.
Yeah, exactly. I think they obviously Sydney Sweeney has escaped unscathed, and Isabella Merced is now on The Last of Us season 2 and doing fantastic, it seems. So I always worry that people will be unfairly, actors especially, who have no control over the material,
Yeah. Well, also, Sydney Sweeney does this thing where she makes bad movies and nobody cares.
That's right.
Because that rom-com with Glenn Powell that she was in, also
God.
bad.
Terrible.
But I still love Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah.
I love Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah.
Anywho.
And I think the person who probably did not come away from this unscathed, unfortunately, is the director, which I do not think is fair. And with something like this is also the first women-led movie in this particular universe. And always with those, they put so much undue pressure on them, and particularly on the director. Of course, the director was a woman, and for some reason, she is then supposed to, with probably little to no control over the script and other elements, she's supposed to create this thing, and I just think she's not set up to succeed.
What's the big lesson of this movie, Madam Web? I'm going to say the lesson for me is just like, enough with the comic book IP. Enough. Find another horse to beat.
I would go with what Lizzie said. You can't reverse engineer a franchise. So you look at some of the smaller characters that succeeded in the early days of the MCU, and I think they had room to breathe because they weren't being compared to the enormous properties. Madame Web comes out, and it becomes an immediate also-ran, and that's really hard.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't think we need more origin stories. I don't care how they started. Just drop me in.
Listen, not to make it all about Fresh Prince, but you know what the Fresh Prince's origin story was? The theme song.
That's right.
That's the setup. And then you're there.
You should write a screenwriting book that's just based entirely on the Fresh Prince. I think it would do really well.
Honestly, what do we call our book that is all about how the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air explains all
Keep it fresh. How backstory ruins your movie.
Yes!
There you go.
Okay, we're going to write this together, and by that I mean we're going to hire a ghostwriter.
There it
Perfect.
is.
Yeah, we don't have time for that.
Yeah. All right, with that, time for a break. When we come back, more Hollywood flops, box office bombs, and downright disasters with my guests, Lizzie Bassett and Chris Winterbauer. They're the hosts of the movie podcast, What Went Wrong. Stay with us.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift, and that extra vehicle you no longer need. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/cars. And thank you.
Houston Public Media is a service of the University of Houston and is supported with your gifts to the Houston Public Media Foundation. More information available online at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
On our next Call to Mind special, we know we should try to diagnose a mental or behavioral health problem as early as possible. But how early?
He would cry and sit in the car and just not want to go in.
I'm Kimberly Adams. Join me for a look at how critical early intervention can be for a child's mental health. Listen for Treating the Young Mind from 8 p.m.
Sunday night at 10 p.m. on News 88.7.
I'm Anita Rao. More and more young people are anxious about our planet's future, and it's impacting their big life decisions.
The conversation today is if we know that devastating, potentially extinction-level events might be on the horizon, why would I bring a child into that?
A conversation about climate anxiety and the kid question. Join us next time on Embodied.
Embodied, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Hey, y'all, it's the Sam Sanders Show, and this episode we are breaking down some of Hollywood's biggest flops. Biggest flops of the last decade. Movies that were supposed to be massive, but instead fizzled. Bombs. Movies that, despite all that, we still can't stop talking about. Here with me are the hosts of the very funny film podcast, What Went Wrong? Lizzie Bassett and Chris Winterbauer. Let's get back into it. Last movie in our roundup of the biggest flops of the last decade. This one is such a flop, and it's like probably
Keep right.
one of the
And then turn right.
more serious discussions of a flop because the lead was just caught up in some like actually disturbing kind of drama. I'm talking about The Flash from 2023. It was meant to restart the DC cinematic universe. It did not, mostly because the lead of this film, Ezra Miller, who plays Barry Allen in the film, they had a bunch of arrests, disturbances, and drama in their life before the film came out. It was a laundry list of like, what are you doing?
Bad. Yeah. It's
right?
bad.
So we got to name this drama before getting into the film and why it flopped. I'm not going to give everyone all the details because it's weird and goes on for a long time. But Ezra Miller, they had multiple arrests leading up to the release of this film. Lunging at folks in a bar, hitting people, throwing a chair and striking people. And Miller went on to say that this was due to, quote, complex mental health issues.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that strikes me about this is that, so they started filming, I believe, around April of 2021, but a year earlier is the first time that Ezra Miller is caught on camera choking a woman outside of a bar in Iceland. It escalates from there. In Iceland, yeah.
Global.
Listen, yeah, they go international with this.
Yeah.
Now, that's sort of the first event. The thing is that, like, they could have stopped this at that point. They didn't.
That's what's wild to me.
The
It's
studio.
like, yeah, the studio knew that Ezra Miller was a problem, to say the least. And I remember up until the very end, they were like, we stand behind Ezra.
Yeah, and it continues to escalate, by the way. Like, throughout the filming, throughout 2022, moving forward, I think the problem is that, like, their first incident is 2021, right? That's before it starts. They go ahead and they start filming. It starts to kick it up a notch around 2022, and that's when you're referencing assaults, arrests. There's more messed up stuff that I don't want to get into on this podcast, but it just starts to escalate and snowball at a rate that I think nobody could really have anticipated, but they're already in post-production. So I don't know what the conversation was, but it must have been a topic of conversation of like, they're going to stop. Like, this has to stop. This will get better. This will get better. And then it just doesn't and doesn't and doesn't. Yeah. What's interesting is the director, Andy Muschietti, who of course also did the It movies, who I think is a great director. Yeah. He stood behind them. Even after a lot of this was happening, he said, if we reboot The Flash, I'm not going to recast Ezra Miller.
Really? Also, just to set up for those who aren't in this world and don't know what a reboot of The Flash represents, what is The Flash? It's part of DC, right? Who is this character, Chris?
Yeah, so Barry Allen, he was established in Zack Snyder's Justice League, or the Zack Snyder iterations of these films. And I would argue plays a similar role as the kind of plucky young pseudo-sidekick to Ben Affleck's more brooding Batman as Tom Holland's Spider-Man to Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr. in the Marvel universe. So it's like kind of a similar dynamic that they set up. And so he has the ability to run incredibly quickly and that you can go through walls.
I remember the trailer. That was cool.
Reverse time becomes the big theme in this film. And so this movie was announced in 2014, and it just kept getting pushed. And there were, multiple directors attached.
It was announced in 2014, doesn't get released until 2023.
Yeah, I believe the original release date was intended to be 2018, which would have been a year after Wonder Woman. And so it was supposed to come much earlier. Multiple directors attached, fall off, writers, etc. Andy Muschietti comes in 2019, I think he attaches, and then the pandemic hits, and then Ezra Miller stuff starts happening. They shoot the movie. I think this movie's good. I enjoyed The Flash.
Really?
I actually like this more than any of the other film. Like, genuinely enjoyed this movie. It's a little messy, but this obviously suffered from the Ezra Miller coverage, but I think it also just suffered from the fact that the DC extended universe that was being built under Zack Snyder was collapsing under its own weight by this point. So you were watching a movie that had no future when you go into the theater, right? This is supposed to set up the continuation of a universe, but it's turned into a cul-de-sac. Exactly. Yeah. Ooh. And which is funny because that's actually the theme of the movie.
Yes, it is really interesting. I don't know if you watched this one, but it's good. Like Chris said, it gets messy. It's too long, but it's very clever in what it does in terms of the fact that instead of making it sort of an origin story about how Barry Allen became the Flash, what they do is they have him sort of reset time to try and save his mother. In doing so, he creates another version of himself, and then you watch the other version of himself get the powers, which is a clever way, I think, of sort of explaining how they operate, how they're doing everything. Ezra Miller, you know what? They did a fantastic job.
They're a great
actor. I will say, though, I really do think it was the Ezra Miller stuff that tanked this movie, because in the first 5 minutes, the opening sequence is a little strange, and it literally kicks off with a bunch of babies flying out the window of a NICU, which is for some reason on the roof of a building that's collapsing. They put it by the helipad. They put these babies at the top. And, the Flash has to go save all these babies, and there's just like falling babies, and, NICU nurse falling. It's very upsetting. There's a baby in a microwave. And like
Why
one
is
of
there a
them,
baby in a microwave?
Well, the Flash put it there.
Yes.
To protect the baby.
You're right, but it's also there's
you know
a
what
baby
they
in a
say.
microwave.
When the baby's in danger, put it in the microwave.
Please don't do that. And then what's bizarre though is like the microwave lands, it dings. They take the baby out. So that's the whole thing where I was like, I don't love this. And then the Flash says to the poor NICU nurse who's standing there just screaming, Barry Allen is like, you should seek mental health help after this. You've experienced a trauma.
I understand that these events can be psychologically scarring. You should seek the services of a mental health professional. The Justice League is not very good at that part yet. Trust me.
That was like, oh my God.
Too on the nose.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And this leads me to the last question about this movie, The Flash, from 2023. What is the lesson here? And for me, the lesson is like, never make anyone in a production of any sort irreplaceable. Everybody can be replaced, and sometimes they need to be replaced. That's it.
Yeah, it's just not that was what I had jotted down too, is like, was this worth, continuing to elevate them at both the movie's expense and I think their expense. Like it's irresponsible to a certain degree to continue giving them.
And it's not helpful to Ezra Miller's recovery.
Right.
What's the lesson for you? Go ahead.
That's the difficulty with the multiverse too, or like if any given movie exists to get you to watch the next movie, continuity can become more important than anything else all of a sudden.
This is why, for me, the moral of the story with all these flops, because we've run through them all now, they're all actually meditations on how continuity can screw up your movie.
Yeah.
We live in this moment of Hollywood existing IP where we treat movies like TV shows. So it used to be TV shows fit together. This season fits with that season. This episode comes before that episode. And this spinoff ties to this other sitcom. But movies could be, and usually were, standalone, unless you were like getting Godfather 1, 2, and 3. But now you've built these worlds and must exist in these worlds of IP where everything has to connect. And that is never what I want in a good movie. Is this the moral of the story of the flops of the last decade? Stop with the continuity. Let a movie be a movie.
Well, it is a great sentiment, but unfortunately, movies are now going to be advertisements, because if you didn't see HBO's or Max or Warner Discovery's new announcement, they are launching the Storyverse, which allows
the hell is the
brands
Storyverse?
to access iconic film franchises for their commercials. So if you would, if State Farm wants to do a Matrix-style commercial,
are you serious?
Yeah, that's a new, and I'm sure they're going to make a lot of money. I'm sure it's a very smart business decision.
Run this back by me. They're going to do a new advertising tie-in thing. What is this called?
I believe they've called it Storyverse.
I'm looking this up.
Yeah, if you pull up, there's an announcement. This was also announced with the rebrand away from Max back to HBO Max. But I think Warner Brothers is feeling itself right now, and this is a big branding opportunity.
So I'm reading the headline from Deadline. Warner Brothers Discovery launches WBD Storyverse, aiming to engage fans with, quote, original IP through a branded lens. So long story short, now the ads have entered the multiverse?
Kind of, yeah. So like, did you see the When Harry Met Sally?
It's just more than that.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Well, you know what? Just to tie it back to one of our flops, maybe they got the idea from Madam Web, where the villain was crushed by a PepsiCo sign. There you go. If that's what it's going to be, I'll take more.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned When Harry Met Sally, Chris. How does that tie in?
They just did that commercial. Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. It was a Super Bowl commercial.
Oh, it's a Unilever When Harry Met Sally Hellman's commercial.
Hellman's commercial. And they recreate the diner scene, or a couple moments. with those actors.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Fresh Prince would never do this to me.
Well, no, because Will Smith slapped Chris Rock on stage, and none of the brands want to touch him right now. Yeah.
So the moral of this story is all of the biggest flops of the last decade, part of their problems came from continuity. But in fact, the future of not just movies, but advertising is IP continuity.
Because the problem is all the biggest hits were also part of that continuity.
Okay. Well, there you have it. We've learned some great lessons. I've been so honored to have the host of one of my favorite film podcasts on this episode. Tell folks again who you are and what your show is.
I'm Lizzie Bassett. Our show is What Went Wrong, hosted by me and Chris Winterbauer here. And every episode we cover the wacky behind-the-scenes story of a different movie and everything that went wrong, because every movie is a miracle, even Cats.
And our goal is just to get you to watch them and love movies more.
Every movie is a miracle, including Cats. That made me warm inside. I like that.
I truly believe that.
We did it. We did it. All right, this show is a co-production between Sam Sanders Productions and KCRW. We are distributed nationally by PRX. Our showrunner is Tyler Green. Our senior producer is Bennett Purser. Andrea Bautista is our podcast producer. Phil Richards is our technical director. Andrea Dominic is our digital editor. Alicia Baitu composed our theme music. And Arnie Seipel and I, together, co-executive produced this show. All right, if you like what you've heard today, you can find all my interviews on your favorite podcast app, on YouTube, and at kcrw.com/Sam Sanders. With that, go watch a flop or two this weekend. And until next time, be good to yourselves.
PRX. Hello, I'm Ernie Manous. I'm the next Hello Houston. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez will be live in studio to chat and take your questions.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also talk immigration and the rise of deportations here in Houston with attorney Ross Miller.
And I'm Celestia Sherman, and as always, we give you the biggest stories of the day at the top of each hour and get your thoughts. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
It's Hello Houston, where Houston talks, 11 a.m. to 1, right here on News 88.7.
Support comes from LaPorte CPAs and Business Advisors, an independent accounting and business advisory firm serving clients for more than 75 years. With 190 employees across offices in Houston, New Orleans, and other locations. More information at laporte.com.
Your NPR station, News 88.7 KUHF Houston, a service of the University of Houston. Get local and breaking news anytime at houstonpublicmedia.org. Listen to us on your favorite devices. Tell your smart speaker to play News 88.7.
From Futuro Media and PRX, it's Latino USA. I'm Maria Hinojosa. Today, you're shot 4 times and you survive. And that's because you were wearing a faja, a girdle.
That's all I kept pleading. Please don't let me die. My baby's waiting for me. And I feel like she really saved me in so many different ways that I would have never thought.
Also on our show, we meet the Dutch Ricans, the Puerto Ricans who call Pennsylvania Dutch country home. They've bridged some major cultural differences over the years.
I started to see these ladies with these strange dresses, you know, their cape, and these little bonnets on their head. I didn't understand it.
All this coming up on Latino USA. Stay with us, no te vayas.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Reaction is flowing in to word that former President Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that's metastasized to his bones. President Trump says he and wife Melania are saddened to hear of the diagnosis, and they wish Biden a fast and successful recovery. Former Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris says she and her husband Doug are sad to learn of the diagnosis and are keeping Biden and his family in their hearts and prayers. Biden's office says the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. The 82-year-old and his family are considering their medical options. Republicans are hoping to get President Trump's big tax bill back on track with a rare Sunday committee meeting today. NPR's Luke Garrett reports last week 5 House Republicans joined Democrats in voting against the domestic policy bill.
Fiscal hawks on the House Budget Committee voted the bill down because of its price tag. South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman called the bill smoke and mirrors. At issue is work requirements for Medicaid, the federal health care program for poor, elderly, and disabled Americans. House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Fox News Sunday that he largely agrees with the rebelling lawmakers.
Work requirements is a no-brainer. It's like a 90% issue on polling. Able-bodied adults who can work should work.
But this group of Republicans believes the bill doesn't go far enough. They want more cuts to Medicaid. Johnson said he is negotiating with them and that they'll fall in line.
We're going to deliver on this, and we'll get everybody in line to do it.
The House Budget Committee is meeting again late Sunday. Luke Garrett, NPR News, Washington.
Israel's military says an extensive ground operation is underway throughout Gaza. This as ceasefire talks continue. NPR's Carrie Kahn has more.
A Hamas official says the militant group is now negotiating without preconditions. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office says Israel is willing to talk terms for a permanent end to the war, not just a temporary ceasefire, as he has long demanded. The new movement in the talks comes as Israel's airstrikes pound Gaza, forcing residents like 43-year-old Fatia Nasser to flee. In a voice memo sent from northern Gaza, Nasser says before Israel would give some warning a strike was coming. But this time there was none, she says. Glass and rocks were flying after a close-by strike, and she says she's lucky she survived. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Israel's Prime Minister's office says it will now allow a limited amount of food into Gaza after blocking all humanitarian aid for 11 weeks. Futures on Wall Street are lower tonight after Moody's Analytics Friday downgraded the United States rating by 1 notch to AA1, citing financial challenges tied to the federal government's growing budget deficits. This as the economy is already under pressure from President Trump's tariffs. Dow futures are down 0.5%. You're listening to NPR News. Commuters in New Jersey can once again ride the transit rails now that a tentative contract with the engineers has been reached. The agreement ends a strike that brought rail service to a halt on Friday. The union says the deal gives a better pay package than the previous one they rejected. It still has to be approved by the union and the state transit board. Engineers have gone 6 years without a raise. Scientists are learning more about what makes a cat, well, orange. Unlike tigers,
after decades of searching, scientists have pinpointed the exact gene responsible for calico, tortoiseshell, and orange cats, like my orange tabby, Zuko. Scientists have long suspected that orange color was a sex-linked trait. Now, research teams in the United States and Japan have independently located and characterized the mutation responsible for the orange color. Study author Greg Barsh says the Stanford team partnered with cat lovers and community scientists to gather orange cat DNA samples.
It's an example, I think, of how scientists and the public can work together to not only uncover cool things, but also learn important aspects about biology.
Both teams recently published their results in the journal Current Biology. Emily Kwong, NPR News.
And U.S. futures contracts trading lower at this hour. Dow futures are down about 0.6%. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lemelson Foundation, working to harness the power of invention and innovation to accelerate climate action and improve lives around the world. Learn more at lemelson.org. This is NPR.
Support Houston Public Media by donating a vehicle you no longer need. We'll take it in any condition. It's free to you, easy to do, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support. Visit houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thanks.
Support comes from DePelchin Children's Center. May is National Foster Care Awareness Month, and DePelchin is celebrating the foster parents who ensure that Houston area children are part of safe and loving families. Learn more at depelchin.org.
Welcome to Latino USA. I'm Maria Hinojosa. And before we start, we do mention suicide in this piece, so take care.
Okay, hold this side again. I'm gonna do the middle now, okay?
Okay. This, dear listener, is the sound of me getting my eyebrows done. I know. You're like, what? What we do for beauty, right?
Right.
The thing is, this is where the story first began with me and Lisbeth. Thank God for threading, because that's how I met you.
Right? Okay, you can bring your hand down.
I met Lisbeth about 2 years ago when she was just 19 years old. She was working as a brow technician on the posh Upper West Side of Manhattan. And at the time, Lisbeth, who's Dominican, was a new mom. Her baby girl was only 6 months old. And I remember the first time she threaded my eyebrows and that we immediately clicked. We bonded over our love of Dominican culture. We were talking about music, food, all of it. And, well, I do love meeting young Latinas who are tough New Yorkers. And that is Lisbeth.
Sorry for my hair.
Okay, good. Yeah, get comfortable. Are you okay?
Yeah.
And as we're getting ready to record our conversation in the studio, Lisbeth pulls out her phone and shows me photos and videos of her now 2.5-year-old daughter.
Oh, look, this is the video of her hair.
Oh, God, is she adorable?
Yeah. She called her grandpa like, "Papa, look at my hair."
And you know me, dear Latino USA listener, you know that I love to start conversations with people wherever I go. And I like to get deep. So 2 years ago, there I was telling my brow technician, who I had just met, that I had come back recently from reporting in Uvalde, Texas, that I was feeling all of this stress and pain and trauma from talking to folks who lost loved ones in that tragic mass shooting in Uvalde. And when I was telling her this story, I noticed a serious change in Lisbeth's face. And that is the reason why she's in the studio with me today.
Like, every time, I'm just like, dang, only 21 and I done lived the life already.
Because just weeks after Lisbeth's daughter was born in 2022, and she was in the midst of dealing with postpartum at just 18 years old, right at that time is when Lisbeth gets shot on a street in Harlem. Not once, but 4 times. And that would be enough to have Lisbeth come on and share her story with us. But the thing is, the most unexpected part of all of this is that Lisbeth owes her survival in large part to a very traditional Latina postpartum staple, which is la faja, or a girdle. Now, I had heard snippets of Lisbeth's story during the time that I would be seeing her to get my brows done. But this is the first time that we're actually sitting down to talk about what happened.
It was like 8:30 when I got off work. My daughter's dad had picked me up from work, and we had went back uptown to Harlem, where my parents were.
Lisbeth grew up on the same street as her best friend, Angelia, or Angie for short. Angie and Lisbeth were inseparable until Angie moved to Virginia for college. And that's where she ended up getting shot and killed.
My best friend passed away on September 4th of 2022. So every 4th of the month, we would do something to honor her. Usually it would be on my block.
But this time in November of 2022, the outdoor memorial for Angie was moved just 4 blocks away to a friend's place.
Then I see this guy come in a pink bike, which Angie's favorite color was pink, so he just had spray painted it and had a picture of her on it.
The guy on the pink bike was a friend of Angie's, but Lisbeth didn't recognize him, and neither did Angie's mom. Now, at this point, we're literally just a few minutes into our interview, but right when Lisbeth mentions this young man, I can see her start to physically react.
Just need a second.
It's okay, babe. Take as long as you need. You want to tell me what you're feeling right now?
anxiety a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because you're actually telling this story like in a formal way.
Yeah.
My sense is that you've been thinking about this interview for a while.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes.
It's not like, oh, it's just another day I have to go do it. You've been anxious about this for a while.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I asked Lisbeth if she wants to stop or if she wants to talk about something else. But she looks at me with this determination, right? And she says, no, let's keep going. She wants to keep talking about that precise moment at her best friend's memorial.
I am talking with Angie's mom and 2 other mutual friends. And then next thing you know, I look across the street and I see 2 guys with ski masks. But by the time I kind of noticed, it was too late. It was like I looked and then boom, I was on the floor.
The men started shooting towards her direction. They were targeting that young guy on the pink bike.
At first, I was like, did I get shot? Is that why I'm on the floor? Or am I just in shock right now? And then I started feeling excruciating pain all in my left body. And I was just like, no, this is not a shock. My blood was like boiling inside.
Lisbeth had been shot. She had 4 gunshot wounds, 1 in her chest, 1 in her back, and 2 in her arm.
We were there for about 40 minutes.
I'm sorry, what?
It took the ambulance about 40 minutes to get there.
40 minutes?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And when the police officers finally got there, they walked to me. They thought I was already dead.
Oh my God. Lisbeth didn't bleed out, and that's mostly because of what she was wearing.
I had a faja, which is a waist strainer, because I was 2 months postpartum. You know, I was just trying to help my body bounce back after having my baby.
Now, it's not an uncommon thing, especially if you're a Latina. You know, you give birth, and then you get wrapped up almost immediately in a kind of girdle that goes around your waist, and it just kind of tightens you up.
Once I get in the ambulance, they're like ripping my clothes apart. And then one of the EMT, she was a Hispanic girl, and she sees that I have a faja on, and everybody's like, what is that? And she's like, well, she did mention that she had a baby 2 months ago. And in our culture, it's very common for you to have a faja on after you have a baby. My faja was extremely thick. Like, I paid almost $100 for that faja in Washington Heights. It had to be like almost this thick.
About an inch.
And it was something that I didn't even know how I could last my whole work shift with that thing on.
Exit right.
Without suffocating, because it was tight. So
you're smiling now. now you're smiling.
They're like fighting with the scissor, trying to get through it, and then they take it off. And the girl's like, what? Like, nobody really believed what they were seeing, because they seen me with 4 bullet holes and no blood. She was like, literally like, what the It's like, you guys are not understanding right now.
Of course, I knew all about these fajas. I mean, it's pretty serious stuff. And when I had my daughter, I don't remember how, but a faja made its way to me from my family's home in Mexico so that I could wear it. And my mom wore her own version of the faja and got wrapped up after she had me and my siblings. So it's like something that you don't really think about a lot. It's kind of like, you know, the faja's going to help you. But never in my life could I have imagined that a faja would end up saving someone's life, like literally. And neither did Lisbeth.
Yeah, I had a faja on, but a gun is a gun. A bullet hole is a bullet hole. It's not like I have what's those things? Bulletproof vest.
Coming up on Latino USA,
I will wake up every day at the same time, having the same nightmare over and over again, hyperventilating, thinking I was seeing blood on me and feeling extremely scared. I just kept living the same scenario over and over and over and over again.
Stay with us, no te vayas.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
I'm News 88.7 afternoon anchor Gail DeLauder. When I came to Houston, one of the first stories I covered was in Jasper, the James Byrd dragging case. I was on that for a very long time. I covered all the defendants in that case, and it's hard to put into words the emotion of that story and what we heard during the trial. So that is something that is always going to leave a huge impact on me. I covered courts for a long time here in Houston and just a myriad of big cases, very emotional, very dramatic cases that have happened here in Houston.
Welcome back to Latino USA. We're going to continue now with Lisbeth's story, the young mom who was wearing a faja, a girdle, when she was shot on the sidewalk in Harlem 2 years ago.
If I would have known that my faja would have saved me, I wouldn't have overthought so much while I was laying on that ground.
You mean you would have been having a different kind of conversation with God?
Okay, God, I see the point now, but thank you, you know? But no, like, I was really scared, and it wasn't even because I was scared of losing my life. I wasn't even thinking about myself. Everyone that touched me that night knew that I had a 2-month-old back home, because that's all I kept pleading. Please don't let me die. My baby's waiting for me. Like, she's only 2 months. I haven't even experienced her that long. And I feel like she really saved me in so many different ways that I would have never thought. Where is my girl? Where's Leanna? And now that it's like 2 years later, now I really understand. If I would have never had her, I would have never been wearing a faja. If I wouldn't had her, I don't think I would have made it out that dark place that I was in. Where's the most beautiful girl in the world? Give me kisses. Give me kisses.
The layers of mental health struggles Lisbeth went through after being shot, it was a lot. Not only did she develop intense emotional trauma from the shooting, she had post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, but she was also a new mom coping with postpartum anxiety and depression. Even for moms who don't struggle so much with postpartum, it's still a period that's already a fragile moment in a woman's life. And these are two issues that frankly often go overlooked in the United States. There aren't many resources or services specifically dedicated to mental health needs, no matter if it's for new moms or survivors of gun violence. And both of these issues are not easy to talk about, so it can end up feeling very lonely.
Growing up, mental health was not something that we talked about. It was always, oh, what are you sad for? You have a roof over your head. You have both of your parents. You have food. Nothing's wrong. You shouldn't be crying. You shouldn't be feeling like this. We grew up on survival. We didn't grow up on love. We came from a really, really poor campo in the Dominican Republic where, you know, it was days where there was nothing.
And that survival mindset that she learned in the DR, it stayed with her when she and her family came to the United States when Lisbeth was 7 years old. Then, in her early teens, Lisbeth began struggling with anxiety. She was just about to go into high school, the only one of her siblings to end up doing that. And that put a lot of pressure on her not to fail, especially from her parents. She said the anxiety attacks sometimes got so overwhelming that she'd end up blacking out. And through it all, she felt entirely misunderstood by her parents.
They're like, we don't know what you're talking about. They thought that it was just like, oh, these American kids, once they come here, they get so sensitive.
And that's a common feeling for a lot of immigrant families. Like, even acknowledging mental health issues exist can be challenging, let alone having a meaningful, open, calm conversation about it. You see, many first-generation kids grow up with immigrant parents who were raised, in essence, hiding their emotional struggles, and they want their kids to be grateful for the opportunities that they have in the United States and to not complain about their feelings. So it wasn't easy for Lisbeth to talk about all of this with her family. But then one day, when Lisbeth was 17, just after she'd graduated high school, things got really bad. Lisbeth had a severe anxiety attack at home. She was throwing up. She couldn't stop shaking. She couldn't stop crying. And that was when her parents finally took her seriously.
They really were like, I'm so sorry that you've had to deal with this and we didn't know.
But even after that incident, Lisbeth didn't get professional help. It wasn't until her shooting about 2 years later that Lisbeth finally considered therapy.
I would wake up every day at the same time having the same nightmare over and over again, hyperventilating, thinking I was seeing blood on me and feeling extremely scared. I just kept living the same scenario over and over and over and over again. I was like having voices in my head, and I wouldn't come out my room because I felt like someone was after me and my baby, to the point where I wouldn't sleep. I was scared to be away from her any second. I will have the same thought every day, just like, I'm not good enough. What am I here for? I have no family. I have nobody. I feel so alone. Nobody cares for me. I'll be better not here. I would put a lighter to my leg to kind of feel something to kind of bring me back. Girl, you kind of taking it too far. Snap back. You cannot just abandon your child and harm yourself.
For young Latinas in the United States, struggling with mental health is very real. And the data shows it. More than 1 in 4 Latina teenagers has had suicidal thoughts. And for Lisbeth, who was only 19 at the time, these thoughts became constant, and they were weighing really heavily on her. And so whenever Lisbeth had moments that basically snapped her out of this hopeless void, it was when she would think about her baby.
That was kind of bursting the bubble, admitting to myself, I'm suicidal. I need you to help me.
She had the number of a therapist's office on a Post-it note that she had taped on her door, and it was there for weeks. But finally, one day, 3 months after the shooting, Lisbeth picked up the phone and made the call to book an appointment.
The lady's like, the wait is not until July. I said, ma'am,
keep left.
Can I tell you something, please? She's like, yeah, of course. It's like, I got shot 3 months ago, 4 times. I am going also through postpartum depression. I have a 5-month-old baby, and I also have extreme PTSD right now. So I would really, 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 really appreciate you if you can help me. So it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can transfer you somewhere else. And then she transferred me to a trauma department, and they squeezed me into the list. A week later, I had a therapist.
Remember when I told you about tough Latina New Yorkers? You see, that's what I'm talking about. But when it came time to go to that first appointment, she was hesitant. The thought of opening up about her struggles to a complete stranger, it terrified her. Until she got to that first session. And she saw the man who was going to be her therapist, and it changed everything.
He looked just like my dad. And he had such a soft energy. He also grew up in Harlem. And the little girl in me was like, you can open up. You can tell him these things. This is what he's here for.
And this was life-changing for Lisbeth. Knowing she was brave enough to have those conversations actually made her look forward to every therapy session every week.
My therapist taught me about box breathing. It's like a form of meditation. He was just like, close your eyes, relax, try to not hear any of the outside noise, and just act like you're connecting the dots in a box and you're breathing in and out as you go. So let's say we're here.
Lisbeth points her index finger at an imaginary spot in front of her.
You'll breathe in, breathe out, and then you stay at that point.
She draws an imaginary line to another point horizontally.
And then you go back again, breathe in, breathe out.
And then another one going down.
And then you go to the other point.
And she completes this square with her finger as she's taking deep breaths.
You can do 4, you can do 8, you can do as many as you need to calm yourself and get into more of a, okay, I'm feeling, I'm breathing, I'm gonna be okay.
None of this would be happening. You would not have found therapy that allows you to have come up with these coping mechanisms that allow you to basically live on a daily basis. We wouldn't be sitting in this studio for a national audience hearing your story. Were it not for the fact that you got shot. How do you put that together?
Honestly, when this first happened, I was just in such a dark place, and I was like, wow, why would God torture me like this? Why would you keep me here? What am I supposed to look forward to? And now I am like, okay, yes, I got shot.
It was therapy that helped Lisbeth finally start to move forward. It gave her the clarity to leave a relationship that wasn't great, and it gave her the strength to take on being a single mom at just 19. Slowly, Lisbeth began to rebuild her life and her confidence.
I got an amazing promotion at my job. Seeing my daughter grow to be such a beautiful, smart little girl. Wait, let's count in Spanish. Uno. Go straight on. Good job. And it's like, if only I could just hug myself from 2 years ago and just tell myself, girl, you don't even know. None of this is gonna matter in 2 years. I would have never believed her. Because I'm like, there's no way this is getting better. And it did. And it got so much better because it made me such a different person. I see life completely different. I see motherhood completely different because I'm here because I wanted to be the best version of myself for her.
I gotta say, I'm really loving this moment of Lisbeth being in the chair in the studio, and I get a chance to see all of her strength, all of the confidence that she's built up, even as she takes me to the worst moment in her life. But part of that journey for Lisbeth has also been learning how to protect herself and how to prioritize her safety. So for instance, she recently moved out of Harlem, and she's now living in New Jersey. Unfortunately, the thing about PTSD is that the trauma doesn't stay in the past, and it doesn't stay in one place. It often follows you no matter where you go. So one small trigger, whether it's a sound or a smell or just a feeling, it can snap you back to that moment, to the exact time and place of your trauma. Lisbeth is always scanning her surroundings.
That experience has just made me be on my 10 toes about everything and just, listen, you want to cut the line? Cut the line. I don't care. You want to go ahead? Go ahead. I'll give you the pass to drive. You want my seat? Take it. But it's not worth getting into an argument. You don't even know where that person's mental health is at. They're ready to risk it all. You just don't know.
Also, because you're not wearing the faja anymore.
You know, it's so funny because after I had gotten shot, I kept wearing my faja. I got a new one and I kept wearing it, but it wasn't in the same attempt. It was more like, this is my bulletproof vest. And you know, like my coworkers, they knew about it and they're like, Liz, it's not funny. Like, you're messed up in the head. And I'm like, guys, laugh. Laugh. It's funny. Please.
That your faja is your bulletproof vest and you're
like,
proud.
Yeah, I'm like, listen, I'm very proud. If it was me, I'll swing this faja all through. Because, oh my God, whoever created it, I gotta thank you too. Because you got some good stuff in there.
And now we're taking our show from New York City to Pennsylvania, Dutch country. We're going to hear from those who call themselves Dutchericans, a clever portmanteau of Puerto Rican and Dutch. They've lived and worked in the area for nearly a century. And in that time, they fused their Puerto Rican heritage with the Mennonite church and culture. Let's tune in.
If you drive an hour and a half west of Philadelphia, you'll find Pennsylvania Dutch country. Some 300 years ago, Amish and Mennonite people, known for their plain dress and simple way of life, began settling right here. It's really out in the middle of nowhere. Look at all these old cornfields.
Yeah, it's back in the boonies. They didn't used to be any houses around here.
Oh, it was just fields.
Yeah, it was just fields.
I'm with Ramona Navedo. She was born in Puerto Rico, but she's called Pennsylvania Dutch country home for most of her life. Today, she's taking me to a place from her childhood.
It'll be this lane up here on the left. See, I hadn't been back here for years and years and years.
We come to a ranch property once owned by a Mennonite farmer. Ramona used to live here. Well, sort of. We walk to the back of the property where we find a shack, a chicken house, as Ramona affectionately calls it.
We came here in 1952, where it was, fixed up so that we could live in it. Like I said, since I was so young, it didn't really bother me that this was such a small place, because this was made for chickens, not for humans.
It's a rectangular structure. The size and shape reminds me of a school bus.
I don't know if this one's open or not.
Wow, there's just hay in here.
This should be the bedroom.
How big do you think this space is?
Oh my, maybe 10 by 13? You think? I can't believe that was our bedroom for 4 people.
Ramona's family moved to Pennsylvania Dutch country when she was just a child. They were part of a wave of Puerto Ricans who moved to the mainland U.S. due to economic hardship following the Great Depression. For Ramona, there was life before this chicken house and life after. The clothes she wore, the food she ate, the religion she practiced, the community she would become part of, it would all change. Ramona and many other Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania Dutch country just like her would eventually forge a unique cultural identity, today known as Dutchericans.
And then exit left.
Stories about immigration often make me think so much about the issue of sacrifice, what people have to give up or embrace in pursuit of opportunity, stability, safety, all of those things. And this feels especially relevant today when Latinos, Latinas, and Latinx people are being targeted across the United States. This tension is central to the story of Dutch Ricans, Puerto Ricans who have been living among Pennsylvania's Mennonite communities since the 1940s. Now, you won't read about them in history books, but Dutch Ricans have faced unique challenges and a complex relationship with the Mennonite community for about a century. And bringing us this story is producer Sarah McClure. Sarah, welcome to Latino USA. I am fascinated.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
I've been obsessed with Pennsylvania for a while now, and Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania. But this is a completely unique story that I had never heard of.
I learned about this, actually, Dutch Ricans, only after speaking with a couple of scholars from Lebanon Valley College here in Pennsylvania. Professors John Hinshaw and Yvette Guzman Zavala started researching Dutch Ricans about a decade ago.
The name Dutch Rican was given to us by this man that we interviewed, Pedro Cruz. He was trying to come up with a term that he thinks as his identity, and he said, I am not a New Yorker, of course, as part of the Puerto Rican diaspora. I am not a Puerto Rican, I am a Dutch Rican.
Okay, so that is pretty cool. Pedro and the professors basically helped to coin the term and put Dutch Ricans on the map. I mean, that's a great story.
Absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing is this recognition, even celebration of Dutch Rican history and recent years. Because descendants like Pedro and Ramona, the woman you heard from the beginning of the episode, are telling their stories.
I first learned about Mennonites in Mexico because it's Los Menonitas who make cheese in northern Mexico. But this is a different kind of reality. This is Amish and Mennonites in the state of Pennsylvania. So tell us more about them.
Yeah, the Amish and Mennonites share interesting history. During the 17th century, they fled religious persecution in Europe. They first arrived here in Pennsylvania and over the centuries have spread across the entire country. Today, the Amish are pretty traditional. They limit their education to the 8th grade, avoid modern technology. The Mennonites can be as traditional as the Amish. However, Mennonites are more integrated into society. Puerto Ricans are one of the fastest growing groups in the Mennonite church, nationwide. And that brings us to our story today.
Get ready. All right, Sarah, we're going to hand it over to you. I can't wait to hear this piece.
Turn left.
Hi.
What a beautiful day.
Oh my gosh,
I was scared it was going to be so hot, and I'm like, I want to sit on the porch. Oh, very well.
It's nice to see you again. When I arrive at Ramona's house, she's already on the porch, waving for me to come inside.
Turn left.
I'm quickly greeted with a hug and a kiss on the cheek. Ramona is in her late 70s and lives alone, but she isn't lonely. Every wall and surface is adorned with family photos, including of her 4 adult children. These pictures tell a story of Ramona's long life, which began in Puerto Rico, in a barrio called Rio Chiquito in Montes Llano. Ramona's family was poor, but she still has good memories from this time. Her mother, Paula, washing clothes in the river, cooking crayfish and cantoles on a fogón. There was love in the home, even though sometimes there wasn't a lot of food, much less doctors or medicines. One day, her older brother passed away unexpectedly.
My dad, he was horrified when he found out. By the time he got the letter, my brother was already buried.
Ramona's father was not in Puerto Rico when this happened. He had been in the States for months already, picking tomatoes for a Mennonite farmer named Elmer Weaver in Pennsylvania Dutch country.
Elmer P. Weaver Sr. said to him that summer, I know how much you have been suffering because your family is not here. Would you like to have them with you? And of course he said yes.
In 1952, 5-year-old Ramona, her younger sister, and her mom left Puerto Rico to move to Pennsylvania. It was Ramona's first time on a plane.
They picked us up in a car. It was snowing. Can you imagine this little girl coming from Puerto Rico, never had seen snow. So my nose was like plastered against the car watching this stuff fall,
Snow wasn't the only novel thing. The Mennonite girls in Pennsylvania soon changed Ramona's clothing.
And they put me on top of this table, and I started to cry. They put long stockings and a coat and a hat and boots. I still remember. It was such a traumatic thing that I still remember.
In Puerto Rico, Ramona loved running around in her chones, playing barefoot in the rain, but she soon realized that wasn't going to fly in Pennsylvania.
I started to see these ladies with these strange dresses, their cape, and these little bonnets on their head. I didn't understand it.
Mennonites believed in evangelizing Puerto Ricans.
My mom and my dad, within the year, they were baptized in the church. My first time in the church, I guess, would have been maybe a week later.
Why so fast?
It was like they felt they had to, in gratitude for how they were, received and stuff. I don't really think it was from the heart, but they adapted to the church.
Assimilation also came with loss. Familiar things like cooking on the fogon were renounced.
It was hard on my mother. My mother was the one that really suffered, in the beginning because she couldn't cook the way she cooked when she was in Puerto Rico. They would teach her how to cook American food. So I learned to eat mashed potatoes and gravy and meat made their way,
Ready, turn right. And other things stood out to Ramona, too.
It was kind of strange to see all these people that were so white. Yeah, so that was the beginning of my journey in the United States.
Coming up on Latino USA, Ramona learns that adjusting to life in a predominantly white Mennonite culture didn't always come with acceptance.
They were very loving people, but we couldn't marry them. We couldn't fall in love with them.
Stay with us, no te vayas.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe. R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
I'm Natalie Weber with Houston Public Media's Fort Bend County Bureau. I think it's important that Houston Public Media has a presence in Fort Bend County because it is the Houston region's second largest county, and it's also rapidly growing. And there's a lot of people with really deep roots in Fort Bend County. There's a lot of folks who can trace their families back generations, and so it's a place that a lot of people care about deeply, and they're there because they have really deep connections to the area.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Medical Bridges, delivering life-saving medical supplies to underserved communities in over 100 countries and right here at home. Ways to get involved at medicalbridges.org.
Welcome back to Latino USA. I'm Maria Hinojosa. We're going to return now to our story on the Dutch-Ricans. When Puerto Ricans settled in Pennsylvania Dutch country nearly a century ago, they bonded with the Mennonite community. But they also encountered cultural tensions and barriers. Back now to producer Sarah McClure.
As a teenager, Ramona worked for a Mennonite chicken factory.
When I was working at Victor Weaver's, which I worked in the chicken roll department, an Amish girl who had become my friend asked me, she goes, "Ramona, is it true that all Puerto Ricans carry knives?" And I said, "Yeah, you should see mine." And of course, after a while, I said, "No, that's not true." But that's one of the perceptions they had of the Puerto Ricans, that they all carried knives.
Sometimes, though, this othering was a lot more personal.
They were very loving people. The only thing that hurts, it was okay for us to be friends, like the guys and whatever, it was okay, but we couldn't marry them, we couldn't fall in love with them, and they couldn't fall in love with us.
She remembers how hard it was for her friends who did develop feelings for Mennonites.
I remember one friend of mine, he fell in love with an Anglo girl, very pretty, her name was Ruth, and they had a hard time convincing her parents that it was okay.
Ramona knew that dating a Mennonite man was never an option.
In the 1950s, the Pennsylvania Dutch Mennonites were thinking, oh, we can have people join our church, but they're not going to really be Mennonites because they're not going to marry within the church. They're going to be essentially second-class citizens.
This is Lebanon Valley College professor John Hinshaw. Both he and Professor Yvette Guzman, who we heard at the top, have extensively studied the Dutch Rican community and its history.
The Mennonite tradition, like any religious tradition, is filled with contradictions. There's essentially a kind of civil rights movement within the church because marriage, dating, and all of those things really cut more to the sense of, is Mennonite a lifestyle or is it a religious identity? And if it's a religious identity, then there's no room to make those kinds of invidious distinctions on the basis of ethnicity or language or race.
That tension also showed up when it came to housing.
When we went to rent a place, as long as you were talking to the person on the phone and have no accent, you're fine. You know, they're ready to rent to you.
The first time Ramona met with the landlord to rent her first place, the homeowner was very direct with her.
And he says, I don't rent to Puerto Ricans. So I hung up. So he rented to an Anglo family.
In the 1980s, when Ramona wanted to purchase a home, she encountered a similar situation.
I was looking for a home to buy because, you know, and I was a single parent. Something would come up for sale, and it looked like it was within my range of what I could afford. And I would call, you know, they would be talking to me, and then when I'd say my name, oh, you know what, we sold that one. It's not available anymore. And I thought of doing something like asking one of my Anglo friends to come and to call, but I never did it. By that time, I could have probably had a lawsuit. I would do it now.
Ramona has a sense of humor about it, but housing discrimination in Pennsylvania Dutch country has been a huge problem. This is despite the fact that Puerto Ricans transformed the local economy. When Ramona arrived in 1952, Pennsylvania had about 12,000 temporary farm workers. According to state officials, Puerto Ricans made up roughly half of that number. Puerto Rican labor helped Mennonite farms, factories, and businesses flourish. Remember that chicken factory where Ramona worked? It was owned by a Mennonite farmer, Victor F. Weaver. At the time of his death in 1989, the company was generating $169 in yearly revenue, roughly $4 billion by today's standards. The Weaver Company would eventually become a part of Tyson Foods, a company now worth $21 billion. While the region may have been creating a lot of revenue, it didn't change Ramona's life much. For example, it didn't even occur to her to go to college.
My parents weren't educated, and most of the people that I knew, even the Mennonites, they usually only went to like 8th grade, just like the Amish. So I had nobody to say, you know, it's good for you to go to college or whatever.
Ramona's children did get some opportunities in Pennsylvania Dutch country. She's grateful for that. One owns a construction company, and another, after graduating from Harvard University and Columbia School of Law, is a lawyer. Today, Puerto Rican influence is thriving in Pennsylvania Dutch country, from the food to the music to flags and festivals in the streets. Their contributions can be seen in Dutch Rican exhibits and historical events. There are even Puerto Rican pastors within the Mennonite Church. Over time, old divisions lessened between Puerto Rican and Mennonite communities. Bilingual Mennonite churches were founded to serve the growing Spanish-speaking communities across the country. Puerto Ricans and Mennonites even intermarried. Remember Ramona's friend who fell in love with the Mennonite girl, Ruth?
Eventually, they did get married and had 7 kids and are still together.
It's a special day. Ramona has invited me to church, her Mennonite church. Today, she's reclaimed her Dutch Rican history and is proud to share it with her congregation.
Mennonite believers that we came to live with called me Ramonita. But they said it Ramonita. Kind of English.
Ramona is also sharing her history through photos. Tables with cardboard displays feature dozens of photos of Ramona growing up Mennonite. A congregation member, Esther, joins me.
I love this picture of her where she's wearing her very chic glasses.
Love it. Yeah.
And her cape.
Yeah, that's the very classic traditional dress, still worn by many conservative communities.
Does this make you interested in learning a little bit more about the Mennonite communities in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have some family members who did mission work in Puerto Rico. They would have been, they are conservative Mennonites, and they lived there as missionaries.
These Mennonite missionaries Esther is talking about have actually been in Puerto Rico for nearly a century. Around World War II, Mennonites worked on the island instead of enlisting in the U.S. military. Their pacifist faith made them conscientious objectors. So instead of fighting on the battlefield during the war, they built schools and hospitals in Puerto Rico. By the time the war ended in 1945, you could find Mennonite churches across the island. Back in Pennsylvania, this religious relationship was also an economic one. Mennonite farms and factories used their ties to Puerto Rico to recruit laborers like Ramona's dad. This is how Ramona's life eventually came into contact with the Mennonite church. A lot of it was due to political and economic circumstances that were out of her control. But today, her relationship with the church is firmly on her own terms.
Keep right.
My heart was always drawn to the Mennonite church. And I was asked why. And I guess I can't really say. I can only say that God, that's where he wants me. Thank you.
Bring it out to the light.
Yes, so we can.
You're stronger than me, Ramona.
I used to be really strong. Now I don't know.
Ramona and I are taking out a framed piece of plaster from storage. She's excited to show it to me.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that really is
so
a piece of plaster.
It's actually a piece of wall from the chicken house where she grew up in Pennsylvania Dutch country. When we pull it out, the frame is nearly up to my shoulder. I mean, it's huge. But here's the remarkable part. Ramona's father, Arcadio, etched a message on the wall. Ramona has placed a black and white photo of him inside the frame too. In the photo, he's holding a Bible.
That was my dad at the house. He loved to read the Bible and he loved to sing hymns. To me, it's a treasure.
Arcadio died in 2004, but this wall captures his life as a Dutch Rican. Many Puerto Ricans working on Mennonite farms like Arcadio, they documented their days and dreams on the walls of barns and sheds. Was this pencil?
Yes, that was in pencil.
It's all in Spanish, yeah.
It's all in Spanish.
Ramona reads from the 70-year-old cracked wall.
There hasn't been a Puerto Rican that has judged me, but an American. Yes, because the devil put something in the mind to separate him from God. And it is money that he loves.
The passage is very spiritual and personal. Ramona sits with it for a moment. She discloses that there was a period nearly 30 years ago when she stepped away from the Mennonite church. In that time, the church slowly began to acknowledge her community's history. Artifacts like diaries and photos and music written by and about Dutch Ricans were given more attention and respect. Ramona eventually did come back, but only when she felt that the church was not just a church, but a welcoming, accepting community. One that would be a part of her life in a way that she'd always hoped it would be.
It's very different from what I grew up with. They're very liberal in dress and very liberal in a lot of women cutting their hair and things like that. But the love that they show is worth it. They still have that love for other people, and that has a lot to do with it.
That's it for today. Our show today was produced by Noor Saudi and Sarah McClure, with production support from Roxana Aguirre. It was edited by our managing editor, Fernanda Chavarri, and Alejandra Salazar. Mixing by Leah Shaw Dameron and Stephanie LeBeau. The Latino USA team also includes Julia Caruso, Jessica Ellis, Victoria Estrada, Dominique Inestrosa, Reynaldo Leaños Jr., Andrea López Cruzado, Luis Luna, Marta Martinez, Mónica Morales Garcia, JJ Carubin, Tasha Sandoval, and Nancy Trujillo. Benilei Ramirez, Maria Garcia, and I are co-executive producers, and I'm your host, Maria Hinojosa. Remember, you can find Latino USA on your podcast feed, also on our website, which is latinousa.org. You'll find stories dropping every Friday and Sunday, so subscribe to Latino USA wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on our next episode, and in the meantime, I'll see you on social media, and ya tú sabes, no te vayas.
Latino USA is made possible in part by the Tao Foundation, New York Women's Foundation. The New York Women's Foundation, funding women leaders that build solutions in their communities and celebrating 30 years of radical generosity. And funding for Latino USA's coverage of a culture of health is made possible in part by a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation.
Caution, please mind the speed limit.
From PRX.
You count on Houston Public Media because you understand how important a free press is to a healthy society.
We're not chasing ratings. We're not owned by a corporation. We're here to inform you with facts, context, and clarity.
When you give today, you're helping protect journalism that serves you, not a political agenda or a bottom line.
Support this public service now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
Your NPR station, News 88.7 KUHF Houston, a service of the University of Houston. Get local and breaking news anytime at houstonpublicmedia.org. Listen to us on your favorite devices. Tell your smart speaker to play News 88.7.
This is embodied from PRX and WUNC. I'm Anita Rao. Jade Sasser has long been aware of the realities of climate change. It's one of her academic interests, and she lives in Southern California. But during the 2020 Bobcat fire, her experience shifted from knowing to feeling.
I can evacuate from this particular threat at this particular moment, but the larger problem of climate change itself, there is no escape from that.
That was Jade's first experience of climate anxiety, a term that's taken off as more Americans report negative feelings about our planet's future. We'll talk with Jade about how climate anxiety is impacting young Americans and their big life decisions, like whether or not to have a kid.
It's not about the babies. It's about what babies represent and symbolize.
Those conversations are just ahead on Embodied.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. Former President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. In a statement, his personal office called the cancer a more aggressive form of the disease. NPR's Luke Garrett has more.
Last week, former President Biden was evaluated after a small nodule was found on his prostate. The 82-year-old was then diagnosed with prostate cancer on Friday. The cancer has metastasized to Biden's bone and is a more aggressive case, according to a statement from the personal office of the former president. The statement says the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, allowing for effective management, and that Biden and his family are reviewing treatment options. Prostate cancer is the second most common form of cancer, according to the CDC, and is treatable. The diagnosis comes days before the publishing of an expose book on Biden and a growing debate over the former president's mental fitness during the latter portion of his presidency. Luke Garrett, NPR News, Washington.
Law enforcement officials have named a suspect in the bombing of a fertility clinic in Palm Springs, California yesterday. NPR's Jason DeRose reports.
The FBI says it's fairly confident 25-year-old Guy Edward Bartkus is behind the explosion that badly damaged American Reproductive Center's clinic. Akil Davis is assistant director of the FBI's Los Angeles office.
The subject had nihilistic ideations, and this was a targeted attack against the IVF facility. Make no mistake, we are treating this, as I said yesterday, as an intentional act of terrorism.
The blast was powerful. It blew out windows in neighboring buildings. Debris is strewn across the 5-lane street where the IVF clinic is located, as well as for blocks around. Investigators are combing streets, yards, and parking lots nearby, looking for additional evidence. Jason DeRose, NPR News, Palm Springs, California.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says that at least 19 people were killed when what's believed to have been a tornado swept through the southern part of the state. John McGarry of member station WEKU reports 17 of the dead were in the city of London.
Mamie Cottle says it was a close call for her and her young grandson. She lives in an area where many homes